Welcome to the Veteran Dragonstar Arena guide. So before we start, a few things first. I do assume that you have basic knowledge of the arena. That means you have at least done it in normal mode, so you know some of the mechanics already. I will be explaining only the boss fights because that's probably where the most people are stuck. Then in terms of group setup, what skills to use, what skills has the healer or tank to use, and what gear you should be wearing. You will find this kind of information on alcasthq.com/Dragonstar, otherwise it just would take too long, so you can go read it there. Anyway, let's get started. Sometimes I will speed up or stop the video if I have stuff to explain. Now let's get started. First boss here. Make sure to pull all adds together so you can AoE them down really quickly. Make sure not to stand in front of the boss because he has kind of a Dawnbreaker attack which basically one-shots you. Now the tank has a really important job to do. Pull the boss out of his circle that he just dropped really fast, otherwise he will heal back to full health. Now the tank is also responsible in our group for the chains, so he has to pull like the healers that are far outside, close to the group, so they also be hit with our AoEs. Boss drop circle, tanks immediately pulls him out, so you need to have a super fast reaction time here. The damage dealers have to make sure not to stand in any unnecessary damage, so the healer actually can focus on supporting the group, buffing the group. After some time you also will see those slimy sword and board dudes. You have to be aware that, like the boss, they also drop those protection circles. So you want to actually try to focus them and kill them as fast as possible. Because if the boss drops a circle and this sword and board dude drops a circle, the boss will heal super fast. Also make sure to get rid of the adds as fast as possible, because once the adds are gone, the boss is actually not really that dangerous anymore. It's the adds that make the fight difficult. Now in the second boss fight, make sure to have a torch on the spot where you fight the boss, because mid-fight the fire will go out and you have to relight it with the torch, and it's just easier to get it from close rather than far away. At the start of the fight you want to stay close to the gate where you leave the arena then, because then the mage will actually go closer to the fire rather than the other way, which is really important, so you can have the melee and the mage close together. So now we make sure that our AoE abilities like hit both bosses, but our single target abilities hit the mage, so we are focusing the mage first. Both bosses are looking at the tank, so none of the other three people is actually in danger of getting hit. Sometimes the mage is charging an attack which can be interrupted, so everybody should try to interrupt this attack because it actually deals quite a lot of damage. At some point you get adds, so the tank has to make sure to taunt the big adds ASAP and pull the ranged characters like archers into the group so they also die really quickly. Now you see like the mage died while we are actually trying to kill the adds, and the healer has to make sure to use repentance so everybody has stamina so they can either dodge roll or for example block. Some new adds spawn and you see the tank immediately pulls the archer inside the group. Archer starts doing his AoE attack and we interrupt him because his attacks actually deal quite a lot of damage. He dies really quickly though because he has low health. If you're not fast enough you need to get another torch to relight the fire, otherwise you will die from the ice. Now here it gets tricky. You have to be really aware of the poisons around you. There is a few spots which you need to figure out where you can stand to not get hit. You will see that in a second. And here again we are focusing the mage. Mage does an AoE attack and you have to immediately dodge out because it deals a ton of damage. Now we try to position all the adds and bosses there because that's where you usually don't get hit by the poison. Add spawn and the tank has to chain in the adds, and he also has to make sure to taunt the Wamasu because that dude is actually really dangerous if he gets aimed at the group. One damage dealer has to take care of those stranglers because they spawn in each corner almost at the start, so you have to make sure to kill them as soon as possible, otherwise they will keep pulling people away and you will die. You have to be really careful with that poison. You really need to get used to till where you can move, otherwise the poison will one-shot you. Another wave of ads, and you have to be really careful of the la 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 girl, because if she does the AoE under you and you don't roll out or it gets interrupted, you're gonna die. I do recommend killing the la 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 girl as soon as possible, and you can see there's so much poison around, you really need to be careful where you stand. The melee boss, as long as he's on the tank, is not really dangerous at all. It's the ads that are dangerous. Now this stage is probably the most tanky boss there is around, so it will take quite a lot of time to actually kill him. There's a lot going on. The boss drops AoE, you have to make sure not to stand in that because it snares you, it deals damage, and then spinners sometimes spawn on your position and you need to move out of their AoE really fast because they basically two-shot you, otherwise and the healer can't heal through it. Can I negate the dude? Ads are spawning, make sure to pull them close together and kill them as fast as possible. Make sure to not stand in any of the AoEs, and the mage has a really nasty ice cone attack, so you really have to be careful not to stand in it because it deals a lot of damage. You can see that those dudes that swing around whatever it is, they constantly respawn and you really have to be quick to move out of it, otherwise you're dead. Does that motherfucker have blood spawn on or what? Boss sometimes activates corrosive armor, which basically makes him immune to all damage, and he deals a lot of damage around him, so make sure not to stay close to him. Another thing you might have noticed, some of those spinners that do those AoE thingies are invisible and some are not. So the ones that actually are not invisible take quite a lot of damage, so if you want you could kill them because they keep doing a beam on you which drains health from you, so your healer has to constantly heal. But then again they keep respawning, so in my case it's better to focus the boss and just heal through this small damage. More ads spawn, the tank has to make sure to pull in the mage because he's really dangerous. We are focusing AoEing the ads down as fast as possible because they are really, they can hit really hard. You can see our healer, as long as we don't take a lot of damage, he can buff us, he even can deal damage on the main boss. So once you know how to avoid a lot of damage, the healer can give just more support, which will make it even easier. Arena at the moment. At the start of the fight it is really important that the tank taunts the gargoyle and the two-hander boss. The mage there is not really tauntable and it's not needed. What you want to do is you want to focus the mage, and you see the healer, the moment the mage spawns, the healer uses the aggressive warhorn to boost our damage. Because what does happen if we are not killing the mage fast enough there, it will cast a curse on us and we have to find a platform to stand on in a certain amount of time. If we don't, then we will die. And you can see the tank is basically playing with the gargoyle and the boss, and the two damage dealers and the healer deal damage to the mage, so he dies before he can cast the curse on us. After a certain amount of time the boss will drop a standard and you have to make sure to avoid it because it deals insanely high damage, so the tank has to pull the boss away and you can damage the boss and the gargoyle again. Then we are going into this corner on purpose because at some point a mage will spawn, I will show you that in a second, and also more ads spawn. We pull them together and try to AoE them down as fast as possible.
15 seconds till standard, I think.
Yeah, the kid is snitching all my... At 40% the next mage spawns, so immediately stop doing what you did and make sure to put your AoE dots and all that stuff on the ground, whatever you can, before the mage spawns, so you can focus damaging him as soon as possible, so he dies before the curse can be put on us. The tank can stand with the boss a little bit further away, because if the boss drops a standard you can't damage this curse caster anymore and then you're screwed. I don't know, man. Where's my Jesus beam? I also want the Jesus beam. First off, focus the ads that just spawned, because they can be dangerous. When the lurker, this big green bad dude, dies, he will drop a green field under you. Don't stand in there, it deals a ton of damage. You can stand really for a short time in there, so to regain resources from it, but don't stand too long. You could see the boss just charged his bow. He targets one random person and you have to make sure to dodge all that. If you get hit by the bow, it doesn't do that much damage, but it will drain all your resources. Especially if you're a healer, this can be dangerous. If you don't get any heals, you're dead. Other than that, the boss doesn't really do a lot of damage, but this resource drain thingy hurts hard. You can see we keep focusing the boss, but you can do that however you want. You could kill the ads first and then kill the boss. The tank just has to make sure to keep most of the ads taunted, so they don't really hurt any of the damage dealers or the healers. Stage 7, now it's getting more difficult, so first off, most important thing here, focus the sacrifices first. The sacrifices are those human dudes that have their hands chained and are slowly walking to the middle. You need to kill them before they reach the shrine, otherwise they will transform into huge monsters and kill you, okay? So kill them as soon as possible. The tank has to keep the aggro on the bosses. So we have two bosses, the mage and the warrior. First we are killing the warrior, because the mage sometimes heals himself. You can interrupt his healing, but sometimes it's tricky because the boss uses a nova and it deals a ton of damage, and if it drops on the mage you can't interrupt her. So we want to kill the melee boss first. The melee also has an attack which blinds everybody, and sometimes he can blind people and then immediately drop the nova, so you need to be really careful. Didn't I? At spawn, and we immediately go for the sacrifices first, because we need to kill them ASAP. The tank tries to taunt most of the ads, because the ads can hurt really hard and it's impossible for the healer to reach everybody if you're split up. Make sure to avoid the mines of the mage, because they can really hit hard. If you dodge roll through 2 mines, you're dead. The mage can also drop a negate. Now make sure to get out of that as soon as possible, because at the same time sometimes the melee boss drops a nova and that's just too much damage. Nobody can use heals anymore and you're dead.
Check his healing.
It's a bit late though.
You did it almost good at the same time.
Can we nuke the chick?
Now I do recommend going for the sacrifices once they spawn again. We are nuking here because we have quite high DPS. If you don't have enough DPS, go kill the sacrifices first and then focus on the mage. Basically no incoming damage, so you see the healer spamming puncturing sweeps and using Jesus beam. So we have quite a lot of DPS. If you decide to nuke, you need to kill the boss and the dead Roth. The moment those two ads are dead, like, the sacrifices will despawn.
Nice.
Yeah.
Stage 8, focus the mages first, and the tank should take the boss into the middle of the arena. The boss has a shooting star ultimate, make sure to block it. If you do not block it, you're gonna be dead. Rest in pepperoni. It's over.
I swear to God, if this is going to kill
The boss is facing the tank because sometimes he does this flame cone attack, which is interruptible, but in case you don't manage to interrupt it, it's just easier to avoid damage because we all stand behind the boss. At spawn, and the first thing you want to focus is the battle mage, because he can drop a negate on you and you're gonna die. Also, there is a red and a blue automaton, and they will either put fire or ice on you, but you can interrupt the ice dude from doing that, and then none of those two enemy AoEs will drop on you. If it still does, the ice and the fire AoE dude, they gotta need to stand on top of each other so they kind of negate each other's effect. Now the last ad wave is getting really tough. There is a lot of automaton spawning. Tank has to make sure to interrupt the boss. Tank has to taunt the automatons. The green dude is not tauntable. Then what I do is, like, all those automatons are kind of in the middle, right? And I kind of stand on the edge of their AoE attack, so I still can hit most of the ads with my AoE. Once all the ads are stacked together with the boss, the tank should use an aggressive Warhorn to boost the group's damage, and the healer should use a Nova to reduce the incoming damage. Really important. Makes it a lot easier.
shielded himself in the last second.
Stage 9, now it's getting really difficult. First off, we're killing all the ads. Once the ads are dead, one of the damage dealers has to go down. So you need to make sure to either be able to shield or heal yourself. Because at 80%, 2 mini-bosses spawn, and you can't damage those 2 mini-bosses as long as their ghosts are alive downstairs. I do recommend going down right after the ads are dead, because first off you have to fight another small mob. You have to be really careful. You don't have a healer, you need to heal yourself, and those ads can hit really insanely hard.
Attacker, where the mages?
Tell me when it's spawning, please.
What's the one?
You can see, like, I'm asking upstairs when the boss has 80%, so I know when the ads spawn. You don't need to use werewolf here. I don't know what I did here. Like, anything works, just make sure you have a heal ready. Going back up, and now you want to kill those 2 mini bosses as fast as possible, because if they live too long, you will actually have to go down again and kill their ghosts, and you really want to avoid that. Also, the two-hander mini boss needs to be interrupted. Like, his AoE attack basically one-shots everybody, but it is interruptible. So either don't stand in the AoE or interrupt it.
And because I remorphed, it's resetting it automatically.
When the boss does a bat swarm or like a mist form, just go out of the AoE and just use your ranged attacks, because it deals a lot of damage. Also, sometimes the boss does a charge attack. Don't stand immediately behind him, because if you do, it's still gonna hit you, although you're not standing in the red AoE field.
Ads. Focus the ads.
More ads will spawn. Make sure to focus the ads first. Tank pulls them in, AoE them down, and then focus the boss again. The most difficult phase during this boss fight is when the 2 mini bosses are alive. So once the 2 mini bosses are dead, the fight is not that hard anymore.
Discharge. Look, like he runs completely.
I also do recommend saving all your ultis here. Don't use them anymore, so you have them ready for the end boss of the arena. Now we're on the last boss. I'm going to talk about probably the most used tactic. After I'm done explaining this tactic, I will also show you an alternative in case you really want to play it super safe. So first off, as you can see, the healer and the 2 damage dealers stand just next to the entrance, and the tank is playing with the boss alone around there. Why do we do that? It's because he casts a fire, and if the boss would be too close to us, everybody would get the fire and there would be fire everywhere. This way only the tank gets the fire, and the fire AoE will actually be far away. Once the fire has been placed, the tank will bring the boss to us. He just has to make sure to be able to survive like alone for a little bit. Only the tank got the fire, so only 1 flame atronach will spawn, and you want to kill the flame atro as fast as possible. Keep the flame atro close so he dies from the AoE, and make sure to either block or avoid the boss's like steel tornado attack, otherwise it will one-shot you. With this tactic, your healer needs to make sure to have a taunt with him so he can taunt the boss, because now what will happen is that 2 adds will spawn and the tank will take the 2 adds away, so we still can focus the boss. Tank is taunting both adds and runs far away with them so they can't interrupt us and they will not deal any damage to the damage dealer, so the healer and the damage dealers, which are still on the main boss, can focus on damaging. Now the most tricky part, so you see the tank and the adds don't really bother us anymore, so we can really focus on the boss. Now from 50 to 25% you want to have as much damage as possible, so you actually can make it happen that the next adds don't spawn before the next phase if you have really high DPS. So what are we doing? At 52% we all drop our ultimates. The healer is using an aggressive warhorn and both other damage dealers use their ultis, so we put as much damage on the boss as possible.
Okay, it's dying. Too late, YOLO.
Before he is finished with his sequence, like pulling us and then the explode, we need to drop him to 25%, otherwise the other adds will spawn. In case those other 2 adds spawn, your tank can come back and pull also those 2 adds away, so the tank has to play around with 4 adds. That way, even if they spawn, you actually still can only focus the boss. Maybe the tank will die, but usually it's enough time to actually kill the boss before they return to you. I really do recommend using this strategy. Yes, you need good damage, but it's all a matter of coordination and practice. Your healer also needs to deal damage, needs to know when to block. Your damage dealers the same, need to know when to use the ultimates at the right time and all that kind of stuff. But it's doable, just don't give up right away. In case you want to try another strategy, I will leave a link in the description from Blobsky. He has also a guide uploaded and you can check out his last boss fight there. So you kind of have 2 different tactics you could use and you can decide on your own which one you want to like practice or use.
And my ping just peaked to
You also can catch me streaming on twitch.tv/AlcastHQ in case you have any further questions or like questions in general to the game. Then again, make sure to check out my website so you actually know like what gear you should probably be using to have the best sustain, what races you choose and what setups and all that kind of stuff. It just makes things easier if you go into the arena with a good setup. I really hope the guide is helpful and you actually can complete Dragonstar Arena with it. Make sure to please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching and see you soon. Cheers.